Hello, and welcome to this episode of Security Square, our series focused on all things cybersecurity. Our conversation today is about phishing, and we're going to dive into the recently released Zscaler Threat Labs 2025 phishing report, where we'll get some unprecedented insight into this shifting terrain. My guest today is Zscaler's Chief Security Officer, Deepen Desai. Welcome, Deepen.
Thank you, Shelly, for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have you. So we've both been immersed in all things RSAC in San Francisco this past week, and what a whirlwind that was. Have you had a moment to to breathe?
Oh, I mean, a lot of backlog with 3 to 4 days at the event, more than 2 dozen meetings, media briefings. So yeah, the day work
Yeah.
falls behind, and that's what we're catching up on now.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And and I'm guilty of scheduling this interview during the day that we're trying to catch up. But you know what? I wanted to get you while this report was sort of hot off the presses. So all right. So to set the stage a little bit, as is the case with pretty much everything, the world of phishing is undergoing a rapid evolution, largely driven by GenAI. I think that's safe to say. Just as all of us are rushing to embrace and integrate GenAI into business operations, threat actors are also using it to craft highly targeted phishing, vishing, and smishing campaigns using advanced tactics. Zscaler's report drew from an analysis of over 2 billion blocked phishing transactions that were captured across the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange cloud security platform through 2024. And the report paints a really comprehensive picture of today's threats. Deepen, are you ready to dive into the report and some of the findings?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. All right. So the Zscaler Threat Labs 2025 phishing report is full of tons of information for cybersecurity teams, but I think an important place to start is looking at how the threat landscape has changed in 2024. So for starters, I think there's some good news. It looks like phishing attacks are down by 20% globally, but there's some bad news there as well. Deepen, what are you seeing on the attack front that was alarming?
Right. So the volume may be down, but we're seeing a clear shift from quantitative to qualitative attacks, so higher quality phishing campaigns. Uh, I've been using this term called hybrid phishing, where they're not just relying on the traditional way of sending hundreds, thousands, millions of messages and expecting, a few people click on it and that will be worth it for them. Instead, using AI, using automation, they are able to bring in the context for the victim organization that they're trying to target. And that significantly increases their chances of conducting a successful phishing attack.
Yeah.
This is where the quality is helping them out. Now, they are able to do it at scale, but they're not trying to do what they would do traditionally, where they would send out, millions of spam and expect some
Right.
people to click on it.
And I think it's similar to how we are adapting and adopting the use of Gen AI in our day-to-day work. So when you think about it, we're using Gen AI to help us write more effective emails or marketing materials or do analysis and that sort of thing. And threat actors are doing the same thing. And so instead of getting those poorly written, bad grammar, sort of somewhat easy to identify emails or text messages or whatever, now you're getting things like you said that are contextually accurate, and it's really easy to be tricked. And so I think that that's really playing an outsized role here. And then you have things like the CEO phishing attacks, where it's not hard to figure out who has what role within an organization. And if someone on your team, you may not be a CEO, but you have authority over a group of people. And so if somebody gets a text message or an email from you that says, hey, I need you to go, buy me some gift cards, I'm in a real bind or whatever, people feel compelled to respond to things like that because contextually it makes sense. And so I think those are some of the tools that threat actors are using that more effectively trick us.
Right. The only comment that I'll add, you summarized it well. The gift card scams and all of those are still going on, but
Yeah.
they're definitely moving further than that. Like you give the example of CEO equity email, right? This is basically bringing in the additional context. Oh, there is an appraisal cycle going on for this organization. Let me use this equity grant spear phishing campaign, pretending to be an email coming from CEO targeting very specific employees, and
Yeah.
the chance of that those employees clicking on it because it's an appraisal cycle goes up high.
Yeah.
The other example that I've seen is where they would use audio, deepfake voice or video. This is where they will leverage the public recordings of executives and leverage those public recordings to draft a completely deepfake message, which adds that additional context or additional authenticity to whatever follows that voice or video message. It could be SMS, it could be email, but this is what the employees are dealing with. It's no longer just email. So the email can be well written, but then there are
Right.
these additional layers that they're leveraging because of AI to make it much more believable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Deepen, it doesn't really seem like any industry is completely safe from attacks, but I know that there are some industries that are being harder hit than others. We typically see manufacturing, services, and education sectors that are particularly at risk. Your report, your 2025 report, identified those remain industries that are at high risk. Why is that?
Look, every organization, even if we go by industry vertical, is at a different phase of their journey, digital transformation journey, zero trust journey. And the maturity of the security controls, the maturity of the awareness training, all of those differ. Um, some of these organizations are getting targeted more because, hey, once they're successful in compromising an identity or an asset, phishing is just a starting point.
Yeah.
Their end goal is to steal data. They may want to deploy ransomware. They may want to do info stealer, whatever it may be. But the chances of executing that end-to-end attack cycle goes up significantly for certain organizations, certain industry verticals where they're still early on in their digital transformation or zero trust journey.
Right. Right. I saw that, education saw a jaw-dropping 224% surge in phishing incidents. And I think that actually in no way surprised me because schools at all levels, right, and universities are under pressure to digitize, but a lot of times they're dealing with outdated infrastructure and shoestring IT budgets, and sometimes a lack of highly skilled talent. And so, you've got a seasonal cadence here. You've got financial aid that happens. You've got high pressure environments and all of that sort of thing. And I think that, your report identified that cyber attackers exploit this with what you called ruthless efficiency. Wouldn't you say that that's kind of an interesting thing? I mean, 224% increase is huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, in many of these environments, so for instance, if you take education sector, there are employees of those schools, universities, colleges, which are faculty members, and then there are students. There
Yeah,
will definitely be you're right, the the level of transformation that universities have gone through will be different than the enterprises because of budget and
sure.
various other constraints that they have in place. Second is the level of security or the inspection that they're able to apply on staff versus students will also vary. And
Right,
third is there's no awareness training. I mean, there will be awareness training for staff, but there is limited for students,
right.
right? And that's where students are definitely much more susceptible to falling for these kind of attacks.
Sure. And students are working throughout universities and schools, so that's really humans are always our weakest endpoint, aren't they? Um, you know, but on the flip side, and the good news report, or the good news front rather, your report indicated that sectors like tech and finance saw a decrease in phishing activity. I was really thrilled to see that. What do you see as driving that resilience?
Look, I like how you're seeing this as positive, but I can assure you that while the quantity is down, this is where
Yeah,
my earlier comment on shift from quantity to quality. Look, finance, tech sector, these are finance specifically, highly regulated. they will get a lot of training, awareness training, much more mature security controls as well. So these guys will have very less success if they use the traditional way of phishing, right?
Right.
Sending spam messages and expecting someone to click. This is where they will shift to the quality piece, which is where bringing in those contextualized emails followed by preceded by a voice-based phishing or a video that kind of establishes that additional authenticity, convincing the user to click on it. So the point I'm trying to make is for these sectors, yes, the volume went down. The quality is where the shift is happening because they're trying to make sure the chances of these phishing attacks becoming successful is higher with that
Right.
shift.
Right. Well, what I was encouraged by, though, Deepen, is that, tech saw, according to your report, a 32.8% decrease. Finance is 78.2% decrease. And there are some investments that are happening. And, security is becoming a board level conversation, which, you and I have, have both been championing for a very long time, right? And so you have things like investments in DMARC protocols, and you've got AI enhanced threat detection capabilities, and you've got zero trust architectures, which we've been preaching about forever. And these things are doing what they're supposed to do. So I think that, it doesn't mean that there is not risk and there aren't attacks targeting these sectors. But the way that I interpret this is that, that the strategic business moves that organizations are taking to protect themselves are making a difference to a certain extent. That doesn't mean risk is gone, but it is making a difference.
Yeah, you're spot on. Look, that's where my comment earlier about maturity of both digital or zero trust transformation, the level of controls that they've deployed, zero
Right.
trust architecture being implemented, they're far ahead, and that does put them in a better spot to fight against even these advanced AI-driven phishing attacks. So
Right.
even when they get subjected to a AI backed phishing attack, their chances of reducing that exposure or even avoiding that initial infection is much higher.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was really good to see. We also had some interesting findings come out of the report, Deepen, about, that were geography related. And so the data showed that phishing attacks in the US saw a 31.8% decrease in volume. Some of that was attributed to Gmail's stricter sender authentication policies, could be other things as well, of course. But it looked like attackers have shifted some of their focus, and that your findings were that countries like Brazil and Hong Kong and the Netherlands were seeing some phishing surges. Can we talk about what you might attribute that to?
Yeah, so globally, we are seeing every country. We spoke about industry verticals as well. There is digital transformation. It is one of the imperative of all global governments, and many of these countries are further along than the others. On the US front, you were right. The combination of Gmail driven restrictions, which essentially initially you were able to send those bulk emails to thousands of recipients. They made certain changes which prevents that. So all those spam messages will go away, or at least the volume will reduce. It won't go away
Yeah,
completely.
sure.
In case of these other countries, the the level of digital transformation that they've gone through, right? They may be at different stages. This is where the attackers see an opportunity as these organizations are trying to digitize various aspects of their infrastructure. They're able to conduct a successful phishing attack against one of those companies in that country. The ROI is much higher.
Yeah,
The second reason that I see is many of the multinational companies, when they start a business operation or have an office in these locations as well, where they're trying to up level certain things, these guys will try to get in areas where the controls may not be at the same level. Uh, it could be a extension of the company, or it could be a mergers and acquisition target as well that is announced in one of these country location. They will target that, they will compromise that, and then they will try to move laterally to the parent organization, which may have better security controls. So combination of all of those is what I would attribute to that spike.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, we've really been talking about this throughout our conversation. I think it's safe to say that AI tools are really a hacker's new best friend. Let's dive a little deeper, if we can, into how Gen AI is being used by threat actors to plan and execute these more sophisticated attacks. And maybe do you have any examples of, how threat actors are successfully using Gen AI?
Absolutely. Yeah. So look, phishing, we already spoke about. They are able to bring in that context. I gave you an example of the appraisal cycle. I just gave you an example about the mergers and acquisition target. All of these are context that they're able to bring in just by doing a simple Google search and then craft a very targeted email to the organization. So we're seeing use of AI over there. Absolutely. We're also seeing threat actors leverage AI across the other stages of the attack, one being malware. Now, this is newer trend. This will grow over time as well, but this is where the malware is able to adapt based on the environment that it sees, based on the controls that it sees, and then it's able to dynamically generate code based on all of those things that it has discovered to achieve the outcomes that it was supposed to achieve in the first place. So AI being leveraged to generate these malware payloads,
Yeah,
and then AI being leveraged to also exfiltrate data from these environments.
yeah,
This is where, again, figuring out the context and then sending out data in a way that the traditional security controls will fail to detect.
right.
So we've seen AI being leveraged across the attack stages. An example that I like to point out, this is a public information, like Black Pasta, one of the major ransomware gangs. Their internal chat were leaked. And every security company will look at those to try to learn about their TTPs and make
Yeah,
adjustment to their platform to protect organizations. One of the common theme we saw in that as well was them trying to leverage AI across the board, from phishing, malware, exploit development as well. This is zero-day exploit against certain traditional infrastructure. So definitely a theme that we're going to see being used more and more.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of set the stage for my next question to you. Your report highlighted the most imitated brands in 2024, and that included some of the biggest tech and social media companies in the world. And you mentioned malware, and they can serve these brands can and are serving as malware delivery channels. And companies like Telegram, Facebook, Steam, I laughed when I saw that Microsoft accounted for 51.7% of brand-based phishing attempts, which is not surprising. And then companies like Google and Netflix and Facebook and OneDrive, brands that we use daily, implicitly trust, and rarely question. So I'm guessing that none of that was a surprise to see in the
Yeah.
report findings on your part.
Yeah, this has been the trend year over year, like where we see a combination of both enterprise and consumer brands being targeted. Although everything that we have mentioned in the report is for large enterprises that are going through Zscaler Security Cloud, but they will target both consumer and enterprise apps because their goal is either to steal those credentials, and maybe if they're able to leverage that to then compromise that endpoint, they're able to then go through the enterprise channel as well. Um, their use of some of these social medias to serve that next stage payload in
Yeah,
case an employee falls for it. This is allowing them to use TLS to serve that payload. So in an encrypted form, the payload gets served on the endpoint, and they're able to again compromise that endpoint for any employee that clicks on that link, falls for the phishing attack. And again, the next stage will be depending on whatever the objective is, but more than likely they will try to move around in the enterprise environment.
yeah, yeah. And when you think about it, it's so easy to fall for these things. We're all moving at such a quick pace. And, when we talk about in the cybersecurity space, we talk about alert fatigue, but us is just ordinary alert fatigue specific to IT teams, right? But I have alert fatigue, don't you?
Alert fatigue is a problem, and often you will try to invest in another tool to reduce that alert fatigue, but it will inadvertently generate more alerts, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem industry is facing for sure.
Yeah, and I think that, again, when you're talking about users, and users are, endpoints that are at risk, and, you see a text message, you're in a hurry, you're trying to do 50 things, you're, quickly click on a link, or same thing with an email or something that comes by way of, I've talked on this program before about the risk that collaboration platforms pose. We don't talk about those very much, but we all are using collaboration platforms, and there's a possibility of malware being inserted in there as well. So it really isn't surprising that these kinds of channels are so easy to exploit. And I don't know that there is an end in sight to that, really.
Yeah, look, again, this is just showing the shift towards threat actors leveraging some form of trusted channels where the
Yeah.
users trust that platform, trust that brand in order to achieve their phishing goals, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to see more and more of that.
Absolutely. So now let's talk a little bit about the future. I know that your report highlighted some key phishing trends to be aware of. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to share, that you want to walk me through?
We went through a couple of the major ones where we're going to see more and more of the hybrid phishing campaign, as I like to call it, where not only are they going to use generative AI to draft very uh, specific templates, but it will always often be followed or preceded with a voice or video. That thing is going to pick up because the chances of those attacks being successful, there are various documented cases of it. I'm sure you heard of the IT help desk campaign that started more than a year ago, and how that campaign itself has evolved. So maybe I can spend 90 seconds on it.
Go
So
right ahead. Yes.
they would call IT help desk employees claiming to be the employee of the company, need help resetting their password because they've lost their phone, need help resetting MFA. And they were able to answer certain questions that the IT help desk would ask.
Yeah.
And they were able to compromise multiple organizations using this playbook. So next thing that will happen is the IT help desk playbooks on validating these employees changed. They would now contact the manager of the employee as well, in addition to those questions that they were asking, which meant the attacker now changed their playbook. This is where many of the groups started making the call against to IT help desk, pretending to be security team members, saying, hey, there was an infection on your machine. We need to investigate. Again, they find nothing. They will not raise any suspicious. But at the end of it, they will ask them to fill out a survey for the security team's response activity. Again, IT team was trained on that. The number of successful attacks went down, and then these guys shifted to, okay, maybe let me use a combination of both. So they were sending tons of spam messages to 2 or 3 employees of a company. Within 5 minutes, they will call those employees and tell them that, hey, there was a security control failure due to a config issue. And I'm from the security team. I can help fix that problem. You may have noticed a lot of spam messages. So now the user saw those spam messages and he's getting a call from the IT or the
Yeah.
security team to fix it. It becomes very hard. And in this case as well, there were several organizations that fell for this attack, resulting in a ransomware infection. So
Yeah.
we're going to see more and more of these hybrid approaches to getting that initial identity, initial asset getting compromised using phishing, vishing as a vector, and AI playing a big role across the board.
Yeah. I think that at one point in time, it might have been safe to categorize some of these attacks as sloppy and hopeful. And today, they are sophisticated and strategic and well thought out. And it's really, really interesting to see this evolution.
Absolutely. It's interesting and scary, right?
Well,
'Cause
absolutely, absolutely. I made the comment once. I was not long ago. I was interviewing a CISO, and we were talking. I said, it's a fascinating time, especially those of us who are old enough to have navigated sort of the advent of the web, in the sense of, the web was around a long time, but when we actually started using it meaningfully for business purposes beyond simply sending emails to one another, it was transformational, and it continues to be transformational. And AI is, and in general, and Gen AI in particular, is having that same transformational effect. And so it is thrilling to be a part of this evolution. It's also scary as hell.
yeah, agreed, 100%.
Absolutely. So, Deepan, as we wrap the episode, what advice do you want to leave our listeners as they navigate their own cybersecurity journeys? What do they need to think about? What do they need to know to stay protected?
Yeah, so with the AI-driven threat landscape discussion that we had, the one thing that I always advise my peers, the organization that I speak with as well, is number one, you need to invest in a platform that allows you to leverage AI to fight AI, because that's how you're able to improve your efficacy, your response time, your efficiency in fighting, preventing some of these attacks from becoming successful. So, number one thing, invest in a platform. In our case, we're using AI across the attack chain in Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange to make sure we're able to prevent these AI-driven phishing attacks, malware, exfiltration attempts as well.
Right.
The second piece, and the second piece is very important in the current time, because AI driven solutions, even AI driven attacks, are still evolving. We are not at a stage where an AI module is able to solve all your threat detection problems. It's not going to be foolproof. We can leverage AI to become efficient and improve our efficacy, but we cannot replace humans or traditional ways of detecting things completely by AI. We're not there yet. So,
Right.
which is why the second piece is important. That's where all global organizations should work on implementing a zero trust everywhere strategy. This is where simplify your network, eliminate the attack paths that the attackers of all kinds, whether it's an AI based attacker or traditional attacker, you should reduce those attack paths that they're able to take when they're going to target your organization. That's where having that zero trust strategy is very, very important.
Yeah. And it is table stakes today.
It is. And good thing is everyone realizes is everyone has a plan, but it's the pace at which organizations are moving is different. And that's where threat actors will continue to take advantage of the
Yeah.
situation.
Well, the good news on that front is that the one budget that doesn't seem to be affected by AI is the security budget. So people understand how important security is, understand how important it is to fund that. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get there, that we'll get some of these laggards moving along sooner rather than later. And hopefully before, they have to navigate a breach, because that is really no fun at all.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
Absolutely. So, Zscaler Chief Security Officer Deepen Desai, thank you so much for joining me today for this look through Zscaler Threat Labs 2025 phishing report. I knew it was going to be a great conversation. You did not disappoint, and you never do. But thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Shelly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, to our viewers and listeners, know that I will include a link to the Zscaler report in the show notes. And so you'll be able to access that. I hope you will, and I hope you'll go through it. And if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, now is as good a time as any to do it. And we'll see you here next time.